One thing, stop recording it and find the file. I
think this is what. Thank you. So let's start. We'll go today in three parts. First, we'll have a primer. In the primer, we'll look at what is film analysis, what are the various ways of doing film analysis, how do we use psychoanalysis to do film analysis, and why we do it at all. So this will be the first part, the primer. After that, we'll screen the movie or the episode. Then we'll take a tea break, and then we'll come to analyzing using psychoanalysis what we have seen. So this will be the flow of things. Um, Anyone who wishes to share anything, discuss, if it is related to the patient, please hide the identifying information, as I'll be putting up the recording on YouTube for those who have not been able to make it today. Any questions you have, feel free to ask it anytime. Okay. So we'll have extensive time for question answers. Okay. So let us take a look today at what we are seeing. We'll be doing analysis today of one episode of a Sherlock Holmes serial. Everyone knows about stories of Sherlock Holmes. And psychoanalysis itself is a Sherlock Holmes profession. What we see in Sherlock Holmes is some client or somebody brings a very strange story to Sherlock Holmes. Something which is very strange, almost looks absurd. And then Sherlock Holmes, using certain techniques of observation and deduction, finds out the answer to that riddle, and it produces a wow feeling in us. And that wow feeling is what keeps Sherlock Holmes going. In psychoanalysis, we have a similar thing, that the patient brings to us a strange dream, he brings to us a strange symptom, and we have to make sense out of it. That what does this seemingly absurd thing mean at all? And how is this connected to the innermost life of the person? So when you have a dream, the dream is a manifest dream which the person sees and remembers. But what has come up actually is not the real story. The real story is in the unconscious. And it is our job to analyze the dream and go to the real story. Same thing happens here. We take up a work of art, whether it is a story, a novel, a movie, a TV serial, an episode of TV serial, and we try to go deeper into what has led to creation of this, what is in the unconscious mind that releases itself into this creative product. So today what we'll look at is a episode of Sherlock Holmes, one story titled A Scandal in Bohemia. Many studios have made serials on Sherlock Holmes, but I believe the best serial made was made by Granada Productions. This was in the 80s, and this is my favorite. So I have picked up Scandal in Bohemia, produced by Granada Productions. And this is very difficult to get on YouTube. It's been removed. So what we'll look at today is one episode of the TV series And every episode you have one story. So this is one story, a scandal in Bohemia. So let us look at how film analysis is done and what it is. By definition, it is two words, film and analysis. So we are doing analysis of a film. Now that is not one thing to do. You can do film analysis of any film from a variety of standpoints, and it will give you a very different output. Somebody can look at a film and analyze it from the standpoint of acting, how various players have acted their roles, how they have used their facial expressions, their voice modulation, their body language, their movement in front of the camera, and so on and so forth. Another person can analyze a movie from a music standpoint, that when a tragic scene came, which instruments were used? When a happy scene came, which instruments were used? What acoustics were used? And so on and so forth. Somebody can analyze the same movie from cinematography point of view, that how each shot was shot using lighting, angle, camera movement, and so on. Somebody can analyze it on the basis of the story. What kind of story is it? Is it a romantic story? Is it an aggressive story? Is it a popular story? It is a iconoclastic story from a very literary standpoint. That how stories are in literature and what is this type of story. Somebody can look at it from an ideological standpoint and talk about, is it a leftist driven story? It is a rightist driven story. What is the Marxist interpretation of the story? What is the conservative interpretation of the story? And so on. One of the ways of interpreting a film is using psychoanalysis, which is what we will be doing. And what we do is we try to use the theory of psychoanalysis to analyze a movie. And by that, what we do is we look at the movie and then we try to find out what is the hidden story behind this manifest story. So we take the story as it is, as the manifest story. And we ask a question, what is the hidden psychoanalytic story in the unconscious related to this story which is being consciously narrated? It's almost like the free association of a patient. That the patient consciously free associates in the therapy room and says something consciously. And from that, we try to get into the unconscious mind. Okay, what would be in the unconscious mind which would lead to this conscious utterance? So that kind of linkage we see in any story, that the story which is on the screen and the story which is in the unconscious, of which the story on the screen is a manifestation. Okay. So this is what we do in psychoanalytic film analysis. We use the theories of psychoanalysis to analyze a film. And when we say a film, we include a film, video, television serial, anything. Now, how can we do it? There are various ways of doing psychoanalytic film analysis. Somebody can take an approach that I will look at the film as a work of art, and from the work of art, I'll try to understand the mind of the artist, the unconscious of the artist, from where this product is coming out. That is one way of doing film analysis, where in case of a novel, you could straight go to the author. In case of a story, you can go to the author and look at the author's childhood. So one way to do it is, if it's a story or a novel, you take up the story or the novel as a work of art, and from there, you go into the unconscious mind of the artist. One way to do it. In case of a movie, it is not one person, but a product of many people. But for our purpose of simplification, what we do is we take it to be the work, intellectually speaking, of either the script writer or the director. And we take up either of them and we go into the childhood of that person and we try to connect that, given this material in the unconscious of the person, this is how the product came out. So we link the film to the unconscious mind of the script writer. And we try to reason out why this script writer ended up in a particular story, particular script, or why a director ended up in a particular story. That is one way of doing film analysis. Second way of doing film analysis is what we will be doing today. Treat the film as an independent text, meaning forget the linkage between the artist and the product of art. Forget the artist for a moment. Forget the author. Just look at the product of art as an independent creation, independent text. So here we are not trying to get into the unconscious of the creator. We are only looking at the product as an independent product and applying psychoanalytic theory to that. The second approach of doing film analysis. Third approach of doing film analysis is that you take up some characters of the film. And those characters of the film, you try to analyze using psychoanalysis. That this character did ABC, and he did ABC because in his unconscious mind he had DEF. Right? So that is another way of doing film analysis. Here, you can link those characters either to the creator's mind or you can do it as an independent text. Both approaches are open to you. Fourth, you can do any of the above and have any combination of the above using one particular school of psychoanalysis. Because psychoanalysis is not one theory. There are schools in psychoanalysis. And this is something very important for those who are not from psychoanalysis. That in psychoanalysis, we at least have 7 major schools and quite a large number of minor schools. The major schools are from Freud, Jung, Adler, Klein, Hartman and Anna Freud, Lacan, Kohut, Winnicott. These are like masters in the area who have created schools behind them. Now, every school in psychoanalysis has its own take on 3 essential things. 1, what is the model of the mind? 2, how pathology originates. 3, how healing should happen. So these are the 3 fundamental questions to anything in psychotherapy, right? How is the functioning of the mind? What is the model of the mind? 1. 2, in the context of the model of the mind, how pathology originates. And 3, how to heal. So these 3 primary questions of mental health and also of psychotherapy, they have different schools have a completely different take on it. Let me take an example. A patient comes with an OCD. He goes to a Freudian therapist and he says this is because of unresolved Oedipus complex. The same patient goes to a Kleinian therapist and the Kleinian therapist says this is because of the split being open. The same patient goes to a Cohusian therapist and he says this is because of a unhealthy cell formation which is disintegrating. And the anxiety of disintegration is being channelized into the obsession. The same person goes to an ISTDP practitioner and he says the murderous and torturous rage which is repressed in the unconscious is leading to this anxiety, leading to the OCD. Because obsession is a way of channelizing anxiety. So different ways of looking at the same thing. Now, obviously, patients of different groups exist because each of the schools has discovered itself through clinical analysis. So obviously, there are group of patients of each type, and you will have combinations that somebody can have the split also open and the Oedipus also unresolved. Both the things are there, and both are leading to OCD. Somebody may have the split open, the Oedipus unresolved, and also murderous and torturous rage leading to signal anxiety. So you have all permutations and combinations. Now the same thing happens here. In film analysis, what do you do? Just as for the same symptom, there will be different explanations of causality in different schools and different ways of healing. Similarly, if you give the same film to a Freudian analyst, he will come out with a different interpretation. His film analysis will be different. Give the same film to a Jungian analyst, his film analysis will be different. So we are not in the realm of exact science. We are in the realm of craft. It is not art. It's not as loose and subjective as art is, but somewhere in between. It's neither a hard science nor an art. It's a craft in between, a soft science. In that space, we are moving about. So here what we will do is, we can use any of the school or many schools for analysis. We started this series about 3-4 months back, right? First film we analyzed was a James Bond movie, Skyfall. And there we welcome. Yeah, please become second. कैसे हो? Just a moment, we'll start off. Should we continue? Wait for a moment. Huh? It's okay, चलेगा. So we started this series about 4 months back. The first movie we analyzed was a James Bond movie, Skyfall. And that movie we analyzed using an eclectic approach. We took some part of Kleinian theory, certain parts of midlife crisis work by many people, and certain part of early loss work by Marvin Hurwitz. That was the conceptual background we used in the first movie. Second movie analysis we did was of Alfred Hitchcock movie Birds. And there we used, by and large, a Kleinian framework. Last time, I think 2 months back, we did that. So we used the Kleinian framework there, Kleinian theory to analyze that movie. Today, what we'll be doing is, we'll be taking up one episode of Sherlock Holmes, one story, and we'll be applying largely a Freudian framework to bring in some sort of variety. So today we'll be using the Freudian framework to analyze this film. Okay. And one more thing we can do is, we can use multiple schools to analyze the same thing. Some concepts from one, some concepts from another. Okay. So to some extent, we'll be doing this today. We'll be using Freudian concepts largely, 90%, and 10% will be using pre-Freudian pathology, some work of Melanie Klein, some work of others. This is how we'll be doing it today. Now, one disclaimer. One can say that film is actually a reality product. Many parts of the film are made because the audience wants it. It is responding more to the market. And it's not always flowing strictly from the unconscious of the writer or the script writer or the director. It's more market driven, which means it reflects more the unconscious of the customers rather than the unconscious of the creator. Now, that part has definitely some validity to it. But for simplicity purpose, we will put aside that part of customer analysis, right? And we'll consider uh, the story to be a product of the writer or the director. And anyway, since we are treating this as an independent text today, those linkages will be keeping aside. Okay? So this is how we'll be going about. And before we go into the screening of the movie, let me put one very good example, very good quotation by Meltzer. Right? He was a very famed psychoanalyst of the Kleinian school. Meltzer used to say, if it is not autobiographical enough, it's not psychoanalytic enough. Right? That every school of psychoanalysis is primarily rooted in an autobiographical experience. And I would agree completely with this, right? That we are in an area where the concept turns into conviction only in the laboratory of the self. And this leads to a half-naughty saying that the erstwhile neurotics are the best Freudians and the erstwhile psychotics are the best Kleinians. Right? And definitely you cannot separate a work of art from the autobiographical content of the artist. There is no way that completely divorced from the unconscious, the conscious can operate when the operation involves such deep emotions. And when it does, you can clearly see the disjointedness of the cognitive effort from the affective depth inside. And those things will not move you. Only those things will move you which are actually rooted deeply in the feeling substratum of the artist. So, this has been, with this background, let us move to the screening of Sherlock Holmes. It will be for about an hour. And after that, we'll take a break, a tea break, and then come to analysis. Okay. Zoom does not give us the leeway for more than 40 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll put the uh, Google Meet link in our group. So, and then we can start the screening. Any questions anybody has? Anyone online, offline, any questions?
A particular reason to limit it to Freudian idea, this particular.
One, the story itself moves towards the Freudian school. That is one part. The second part is Freudian school we have not done till now.
Mm.
So across
Birds was Kleinian, right?
Birds was strictly
And
almost
Skyfall.
strictly. Skyfall was a mixture actually.
Okay. Yeah, it was.
It was a mixture. We took concepts from Klein, we took concepts from midlife, right? We went into the closure of modernity and the difficulties of modernity as a historical period and how that seeps into pathology, right? The social conditions which lead to particular types of pathology. So, right. So what I'll do is I'll close this recording. We won't be recording the screening, and I'll send the new link in the group for the movie.